All right, let's see here. Make sure that's up and running. Oh, Wacom tablet. Mapping. Portion. That looks about right. Make sure I'm on Twitch. Hey, lady. Thanks for showing up. No, I'm not calling her lady. That's the first part of her name here. I mean, I am calling her a lady, but just because that's the first part of her name. Huh. Well, I guess I'm on Twitch. It doesn't seem to be. Oh, there we go. Oh, no. It says I'm offline, but I trust you guys can see what's going on here. Cool. Hey, everybody. Hey, Daniel. Hey, Lucian. Thanks for showing up. Sebastian. Astro. Mr. Shot. Oliver. Let me see. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So, we're up and running here. We're going to continue. I no longer have the magazine with me, apparently. But, let's go ahead and finish out that handgun. What do you say? And then once we finish this, I'm going to go back through and edit it and give you guys a nice, concise playlist we can throw on YouTube. Gumroad, QBrush, all that good stuff. Speaking of, if you don't know already, I'm just going to go ahead and give you my YouTube. There, everybody. And then we'll just get cracking. If I don't get to your, I'll be eyeballing the, let me see, stream topics. I'll be eyeballing the chat, and we'll be going over stuff too. But we'll go from there. And if I miss something, I can get bombarded sometimes, so I just have to kind of take a quick spin. So, oh shoot, hold on. Can't do much without my Wacom tablet pin, right? There we go. All good. Okay, so a couple questions. Sean says how to make a rope like hanging rope or chains. What I would do, and so what you can sometimes find is when you go into something like, oh hell, we have a chain brush. So let's go out of that, and let's go grab a polymesh. Let's hit Chroma key to hide that. So I have a polymesh here. And we want to make a chain from, let's hold down Control, make a copy. So we want to do a chain from here to here. And you're going to go to your brush, curve brush. Doesn't matter what curve brush you do. Even if you start with, say, a curve tube brush, and you're like, there's your curve tube. Oh, you know what? I didn't want a curve tube brush. I'm going to go BI brush insert. And we can go to the curve, insert curve brush, hit M. And there's a dragon spine, there's a chain with a base. This one gets a little bit weird. Let's see if we have another one. BC, brush curve, oops, brush insert. Army curve, clothing, industrial parts. I mean, I guess we could make a chain brush, but if you have a chain brush, and it doesn't really, there's another place you can get it too. So if you Google ZBrush IMM repository. Also badking.com has a bunch of these too. You can go through here, and I guarantee you can find a chain in here. Or a rope. That's a cool rope. There's a bike chain. Bike chain I think we've got in here. I could be wrong. But we'll go to like Army curve here, hit M, and yep, there's a bike chain. So we'll make this a bike chain. We'll tap that to update it. And then we can just change our draw size, and that curve will just change to a bike chain. Or if you want, you can change it to a timing chain, or if you want, you can change it to bullets. Doesn't matter. It's very flexible. However, you're going to see it could be a little bit difficult to wrangle going from point to point sometimes. So what I tend to do, and there's a couple things you could do too. You could go to curve. No, not curve. Not that curve anyway. We're going to go to stroke. And then open up all these curve functions. You can hold down shift and open up multiple menus. And you can do lock start and lock end. And then you can position these locked places right here. And then you can kind of just drag this thing around. If you hover over it while it's blue and make your brush size bigger, you can go through and drag this thing around. So that's one way to do it. If you need it to follow a specific plane of existence, what I might be inclined to do, I'm just going to go ahead and tap away from the curve to delete it. And we'll do hide point, which is under your visibility menu, and then delete hidden. What I tend to do is go to subtool, append. I'm going to grab a plane, and I just use a proxy mesh. So I'll take this plane here, scale it up, move it in here. On a transparency ghost mode, go to brush, insert, army curve. We'll grab that timing chain this time, and I'll just draw it onto a plane. That way it gives me much better control over what path I want to take, and then I can tap off, do a hide point, split hidden, and then just delete that plane right there. So that's just a little bit easier for me sometimes. Cool. Shoulder armor we've already gone over. I will link you to that playlist. So if you go to my live stream highlights here from my YouTube channel and scroll down to video PavWork 18, video number 12, detailing and stylized rendering on shoulder pads. No, maybe it's not that one. Take it back. Go to PavWork 18, modeling stylized shoulder pads, and we do shoulder pads. Very easy to do. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Hello from Germany. It's a beautiful country. I went there not too long ago. When live boolean is active, why couldn't make shift S? Shift S. What's shift S? I'm not sure what shift S is. Oh, is that the... So making a copy. So if you turn on live boolean, let's see, sphere, edit, make polymesh 3D, duplicate, subtractive mesh. Okay, now I have a live boolean. It might be because it's just a rendering trick. Yeah, I'm assuming because it's a rendering trick that it has some sort of draw that does something weird. I'm not sure. That would be a good ZBrush question, or a ticket maybe. But I'm assuming it's because this live boolean here, if you're not familiar with it, go to my, I'll link you to that too. If you go to my playlist, yeah, I'm on my playlist. If you go to my playlist here and you go to Intro to ZBrush 4R8 What's New, you will see how to do all the live boolean stuff. But because this thing is just a rendering trick, or a rendering preview, it's not a trick, which makes it very powerful, but also probably does some interesting things on the drawing side of... I could make, I mean, I guess those could be nipple clamps. Garrett says, I'm trying to make a rope tied around a waist. How'd you go about doing it? That would just be, so we want that rope right. Let's see. Let's go down to our tool here. Let's grab one of our humanoid meshes. And let's go ahead and hit comma to hide that. So we've got our Nick Z mesh here. And first thing we're going to do is delete other. Don't need all that stuff. And we're going to hit Control W, make it all one polygroup. And we're also going to go to our layers. And we're going to go to bake all. So now that we have this, we want to put a rope around his waist. One way we can do it is we can go to select lasso. And we can just, oh, you know what? Let me get rid of that Camtasia. It's kind of in the way. Sorry about that. Let's hit X to go across X symmetry here. Basically what we're looking for is an open border to go ahead and put a rope on. That's one way to do this. So then if we want to go to anything, brush, insert, army curve, we'll put a bike chain around his waist here. And then turn off X symmetry if you're going to go around an object. And then as you're dragging towards this, hold down Shift, and it'll just snap around that open place there. You can also, if you're just going around an object, you can start dragging off and then hold down Shift, and that'll wrap around your object as well. Depending on your brush, that may, and the surface of your object, that may or may not work perfect every time, but it should do a pretty good job. You can also, let's see, let's go ahead and split hidden. You can also, if you have a poly group here, so we just do a slice curve, like so. Then you start drawing and you hold down Shift, it'll snap around that poly group as well. There you go. So pretty easy to wrap around. When making Boolean, mesh destroys all the subdivs. What is your preferred workflow when you need to preserve the subdivisions and create a low poly? I would just zero mesh it. So, and creating a low poly is something we'll be going over today. I'm getting towards never ever creating a low poly again, either through Houdini or Instalod. But if you insist on making a low poly here, we would probably do something like this. So make polymesh 3D, and let's say I've got subdivisions here. I duplicate this one off. And this isn't going to work for every possible thing, but for instance, if this is our live Boolean mesh and we have subdivisions and we want to make a low poly after we go to the Boolean, we don't have dynamic, we'll just make Boolean mesh here. And we have a mesh right here, and it's like, oh, how do we do this? Well, one easy way to do that is just to go into your zero mesher settings, keep groups, turn smooth groups down to 0. Let's do half, adapt the size down a bit, just hit zero mesh, and that'll go ahead and give you a start on your low poly remesh. You can do a few more tricks, and we've gone over this before, where it's like you can isolate this one and try maybe, if you want to maintain these corners a little bit better, you can make that one a poly group, and this one a poly group here. It's basically just breaking up your objects into different poly groups so that you can use zero mesher to control those. I'm not even saying this is going to work that well, but again, we have smooth group, keep groups on, smooth groups down, and then zero mesh this, and now you can try and, you know, maintain that. You can keep hitting half if you want to. So this will just kind of get you your low poly back, and of course you can, you know, duplicate this up and snap to your original. But that could take some of the pain out of remeshing an object and getting your subdivisions back. For instance. Way to snap a line like you can in Maya, like a vert to another vert. Let me think. Is there a way to move one vert to another vert? You can snap, you can weld a vert to another vert with a Z modeler. That's a good one. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I don't usually get that precise in ZBrush. Adobe Dimension CC works like KeyShot. Oh, that sounds interesting. No, I've never used it. I'll put that on my list of things to check out. Photoshop Dimension. I'll give it a whirl someday. Started on ZBrush, and I find that everything I sculpt feels quite inflated, bloated. Any way to get around this? Looking to make Diablo-style environment art. Don't sculpt in a bloated style, I guess. I'm not sure what you mean by bloated. If you're just sculpting here, so if we go to complete perspective turn off, we turn on X symmetry, and we go in here, and one thing you can do for kind of stylized environments and stuff that's kind of fun. Let's go into our trim brush. We'll go ahead and turn on Dynamesh here. Let's see, preferences, edit, line cursor surface. Oh, another good one I like to use is, hold on. Let's go to brush here, and a mallet sometimes good. What am I looking for? A trim smooth border. Yeah, and we'll go to freehand is fine, square alpha, and we can kind of go through here and kind of make a nice crispy bacon. I mean, stylized something or other. One trick you can do with this type of mesh here is you can go, it's not a trick, it's just something that you may not be aware of. So it's a geometry clay polish here. You can use clay polish to kind of give it that stylized look and play with these settings too. And you can just keep hitting clay polish as well. So that'll kind of give you that kind of look. You can also like do sharp and resharp and get different effects too. So you can kind of use that to your advantage. I know how to shift wrap around, but how do I make it look like it's an actual tied in a knot and not just stuck to the waist? You could make a proxy mesh that ties it in a knot. Honestly, I would just model something in a knot. So if I'm gonna need something in a knot-like fashion, probably the easiest, just like making a fist, I would just probably sculpt a fist if I had to start with something. For effect, but like initialize cube, I would just say, let's go delete single poly, let's go to bridge, 2 holes, you know, just start modeling a knot that would kind of sit there as a proxy. I mean, you could try and like make a mesh where you swoop a curve around and then do visibility on your proxy mesh and continue that curve around and continue that curve around. Might be a little more trouble than it's worth. I don't know how to, I'm not dexterous enough to tie a knot with the curve brushes. What do I mean by I'll never make a low poly again? I will never make a low poly again. Check out Houdini. Check out Instalod. It's coming. I can look at your portfolio. Boris asks if I'm doing portfolio reviews. I'm not that great at feedback. Basically, my thing on portfolios is tailor your portfolio to who you want to work for, what kind of work they do, and if you want to do characters or props or environments, make sure you have a good broad range of really, really good work, which is easier said than done. Yeah, only working the high res now. Fastest way to make a rock is to go to BI brush insert, and then where are they at? I know we got some rocks in here. Maybe they're not called insert. Let's go to brush. Is it called clumps or something? Or did they take that out? They might have taken that out of this default. So if you ever see they taken something out, go to your brush menu here, and then go to there's sometimes beta tester brushes that have interesting things in them. So here's scales, treads. Here's some rope if you needed that. If we go back up, I go to the IMM. Where is that at? And my brain has just gone LMHIJK. Insert. Duh. There you go. There's some bricks. Here's a clod. So we'll take a clod. We'll go in there and we'll just drag that out. If I don't like this one, I can just cycle through, grab another one. Or if I do like this one, I can mask it and then drag out a copy here and then grab another one. That's the fastest way to make rocks. Do you sell or license your models outside of the entertainment industry? I don't really do a lot of models on the side, so no, but I wouldn't mind. I'd be fine if anybody was interested in my models. I usually just give them away for free once I'm done with them. Do Do you work in the industry making props, environments, characters, and what area of the industry? I do work in the industry. Let me see. Oh, skip. Who am I? There I am. There you go. You can see. You can see what I worked on and where I work. My LinkedIn. I am streaming from Austin, Texas time zone, whichever one that is. Alrighty, let's get cracking. So I'm going to initialize ZBrush because we've kind of filled this up with stuff. And let's go ahead. I'm going to take my document here, change that range down to 0, just so we can not have that banding. It's not, I don't mind working that way when I'm just working, but when I'm streaming and compressing video, sometimes that's a pain. It doesn't look that great. So let's go over here. Hold on just a second here. Let's go to, so we were streaming. Now we are in the pistol area. So we've got a gun bake here. I'm going to open that up. So we've gone through the process of creating this gun. The only thing we haven't done is done this setup right here. So what we want to end up with is something like this with these things, excuse me, all put together here. So one thing that I do, you know what, let me open up a document really quick. This will kind of walk me through. I mean, I can just do it. I'll do it off the top of my head. I like having checklists, but I've done this enough times where I think I remember how to do it all. So let's say I've got a gun with a bunch of different pieces on here, and I want to make it viable for taking in game resing really quickly and animating and UVing and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is all the animatable pieces I want to be in their own subtool. But let's say they're all over the place. Like these are all separate subtools. All these little bitty pieces are in separate subtools because we've already run it through the Boolean process, right? So what we need to do is put all of these things together. Now before, what I'm going to end up doing is going over here to merge visible. I'm going to merge all these things together and then I'm going to split it apart. But before you do that, there's a couple things you're going to want to do. Load up Z plugin clean tool master. And you're going to go over to your Z plugins and you're going to go, I don't have Z clean master. So go to Google, ZBrush, what is that? Plugins. Google ZBrush Z plugins. Go to download center, ZBrush plugins. Go all the way to the very bottom to the employee created, and you're going to see Z repeat it, which we use a lot. Clean tool master we use a lot. Panel loop presets we use a lot. Not quite as many as the other ones. Z startup master might be interesting to you, and nano tiles I use a lot. So download those, install them. We've talked about that before on the channel. And once you have those installed, and it's basically just copying it to a folder. I guess I can walk you through that too. So if you go to ZBrush 4R8, Z startup, zplug 64, they're going to give you a download folder. You're just going to copy in. There's going to be a Z script, ZSC, and a data folder. Copy those into that folder, that zplugs folder I just showed you. And then restart ZBrush, and when you restart ZBrush, your Z plugin will be right over here. So what we're looking at is this clean tool master. And before we merge all this stuff together, if you're using dynamic subdivisions, which if you'll remember, you grab a cube here, make polymesh 3D. If I hit the D key, that's going to take us into dynamic subdivisions over here, like so, and then you can change your smooth subdivisions and your crease levels and all that. So when you're working on your object, it could look nice and smooth, but as soon as you merge everything together, it's going to go back to its original form. So if you're going to be baking from it, you want to apply the subdivisions. The manual way to do that is to have D selected and then just hit apply over here, and that'll go ahead and make those real subdivision levels. Now if you have a bunch of subtools over here that need to have that run on it, need to have that applied to it, you're going to want to go over here and say dynamic subdivisions to actual subdivisions. Do that for all of your objects. Same thing with BPR to geo. What that means is if you have an object like this, and say you have, say, a array mesh. So we do an array mesh here, and we do an offset, and it doesn't really matter, and the X amount, fine, and then you have a repeat. So if you have an object like this that's like poking holes through your mesh, or making a nice pattern on your mesh, and you want to bake that out, as soon as you merge this together, it's going to kill your array mesh, and it's going to go back to just one. So before you do that, you're going to want to go to, one of the ways to do this is to go to array mesh, hit make mesh, but the cool thing about this is You can also go from geometry, convert BPR to geo, just hit that button, and that will make this real geometry. So again, before you're baking from it, it has to be real. So when you go to merge, it's going to turn all that stuff off. So we have that. What else we need to think about? And any of this other cleanup stuff you want to do. You can bake your layers and delete your UVs. It'll kill your UVs when you do this process. So just make sure you do those two things before you merge. And then we're going to go here to merge visible. And that's going to shoot out a copy here called merged. And now you're going to want to break down your object in a way. Let's go ahead and get rid of our lines here. In a way so that the animators can grab something and animate the stuff off. This is an older version of the weapon. How it works is not a revolving cylinder right here. This is actually modeled out in a slightly better way now, but this breaks. So this thing breaks down like a shotgun, where you kind of break it open and then put the rounds in it. So that's kind of what this does. This thing breaks down. So this thing rotates down, and then you just swap out this cartridge right here. That's just how the design goes. So what we need to do is take all the pieces that need to animate and put them into their own subtools. I'm going to hold down Control Shift. I'm not going to do this for every piece because I've already got one set up, but I'm going to do Control Shift, grab those little pieces, do Control Shift A, and then go ahead and do a split hidden. And as I'm going through, I'm going to turn off the eyeball. I can just tap the nameplate if it's selected, turn that eyeball off. Turn the eyeball off for the body here, and that's going to hit the down arrow. I'm just going to repeat this process. One way you can do it, if you have your polygroup set up, is you can hold down Control Shift, and you can just isolate one of those things, invert that, isolate that. So now I've got this whole back revolver, that little spinny thing. I don't even know what it is. We can just take that piece there. We can go split hidden and just split that off into its own subtool and just keep repeating this process. If you want this button, what I usually tend to do is just grab a little piece of it. Oops. Grab a little piece of it here, do Control Shift A, and then do a split hidden. You can also invert that and do a split hidden. That's under your subtool split menu. And that'll go ahead and split it out. And by doing this, and if you want this thing to rotate, you can go ahead and just grab all these pieces. And the reason I do this is I can just grab multiple pieces at once, and I don't have to sit there and do Control Shift A, or Control Shift and grab a bunch of pieces here. So we can go ahead and split that off too. Basically anything that's going to animate to split into its own subtool. Once you have that, like we have here, you can see these are all labeled. You're going to see I have a dummy mesh up here. It's called Gun Bake ZBrush. What I'll end up doing is I can just put a polymesh star in there and label it, because every time you go here to save as, it's going to want to save the name of the file as the first subtool. So if you just put a dummy node up here, that'll just inherit the name of this file, and then all the rest of these things will be named exactly how I want to. So as you can see, we've got the trigger, cylinder, barrel, button, etc. One thing I forgot to mention is once you've split these things up, so you've already split your trigger off, right? So there's your trigger. We can go into solo mode. You're going to need to fill these with just a color. You can do it a couple different ways. You're going to see if these all have different polygroups here. You can go down here to your polygroup. Wait, no, it wouldn't be that. It would be your poly paint menu, and you can go poly paint from polygroups. It'll take your polygroup color and convert it to a poly paint on your vertices. I like to have a little bit more control. That you can do that really quickly if you just want to get random colors for every single separate piece. But before I go into Painter, I like to just set up my own colors here. So what I can do is, if you want to just do it manually, you can have the trigger selected, go over here and just have this color menu. And if you want a little bit more to select from, just go to color here, open that up, and you can go through these little things, or you can just pick colors in here. It's kind of up to you, but you can isolate individual pieces like, oh, I want to color this thing green. And then you go to color, it's over here, color, fill object. I have that Alt Control F as my hotkey for that, so I can just do Alt Control F, and that'll go ahead and fill all those with a green color. And then I go to red, isolate this one. We can go Alt Control F, and then we can isolate this one. We can go to a pink color, go Alt Control F, and just start filling these things with different material IDs. Now I already have them filled with material IDs. As you can see, if I turn on this colorize, this is what this is going to end up looking like. So you can see these two are the same color, this one is the same color. If you want a little bit more precise ways to color, if you have colors you need to pick from, what you can do is go into your well, you won't have this, but you can set up something. Oh, looks like I don't have it either. Let me see, do I have that copied somewhere? I'll have to make a note of that. What I basically did, should we do that real quick? It's kind of a pain. Let's just do it. Let me open up Photoshop real quick. Give me a second. And let me size this correctly for you. We're in this space here. I guess you guys want to see the file menu. Okay, so we're in Photoshop here, and we're just going to make a swatch JPEG. So we're going to go File, New, and we're going to say, it doesn't really matter, let's do 1024 by 1024. And I'm trying to think the best way to do this. I wonder if we can just do View. It's been a long, I've done this once like years ago. Let me think. And you can probably figure out a better way to do this here. So I'm going to do Show Grid. There we go. So we've got a grid here. And we're also going to open up our swatches. And you can see these are all set up as like, if I go into our info window here, if I roll over this one, this is 255.00 in the RGB spectrum. This is 255.255.0. This is 0.255.0. The reason why I would want to use these is because they're very far away from each other mathematically in the RGB spectrum. So what I can do is I can go M, and oops, I need to change this to a normal. And I also need to do Control Shift semicolon there. There we go. We can snap the grid. So we can say I want to fill this one here with red. I'm just doing so I can fill this with red really quickly. Just fill the foreground color. And then, and you know what, I guess what we also could do, save this a little bit of time. So before we fill that, I'm going to make a new layer. Then I'm going to fill that here. There we go. And then I can take this one and move it down. I'm trying to use ZBrush hotkeys for this. You know what, I don't have my Photoshop set up. All right, duplicate this off and then drag this down. And I was kind of hoping. There we go. So we can snap this one here. And now if we want to fill this one, you can, and actually you can go to image adjust or whatever you want to do, but if you want to fill this one with yellow now, we can just select yellow and then go ahead and fill that. And again, duplicate that off, which of course I don't have my hotkey set up for. Oh, I hate when I don't have hotkey set up. Move this down, select green, fill that up. Oops. However you want to do this, but once you're done making your swatches here, you know, and I guess you don't even need all this. You could just crop this here. And let's say we filled up all this whole long list with all the colors of the rainbow that we want to have filled up. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as swatches. So now when I go back to ZBrush here, we're going to go into this menu here and we're going to grab a polyplane 3D, go into edit mode here. I'm going to go to texture, import, desktop, grab our swatch here, and then go to texture map and grab that swatch texture. So now you can see we have the swatch texture here, and usually what I'll end up doing is making a, and you could make this however you want, but here's a thinner version of it. So I will have a swatch thing here. So now if I go to Tools, Save As, again, I'm going to go to ZBrush 4R8, Z Tools, and you're going to see here's all the demo soldier and stuff. We'll call this swatch. So now if I go out of edit mode and clear my canvas, we're going back to our trigger here. And it's like, okay, I want to fill this thing with those swatch colors. So I'm going to hit my comma key. We're going to go to our tool. So you have a swatch sitting there. We can just double click that. That'll load up our swatch tool here. So we'll just load this thing up. And I can just move this thing over to the side out of the way. Go out of edit mode so it stays there. Go grab my trigger again. And now if I go into solo mode on the trigger, and let me get rid of Camtasia Studio here. as I go in solo mode here, you can just hover over these and hit the C key, and that will go ahead and sample those colors. So now if you want to fill this with yellow, you can fill it with yellow. And then if you want to hit C and fill this one with red, you can fill it with red. And you can just use swatches available to you. So you can just do that just with a swatch there. So that'll give you a little bit more control. So there's all that. Once you're done doing that, if I turn on this, now you're going to see I got a bunch of material IDs, so this color will be the same as this color, and this color. So as I'm dropping materials on this thing, they'll be consistent. Now in Painter, you can select multiple colors and have it assigned to the same material, which we'll get to in a bit. But just so you're aware, that's functionality available to you. I wanted to go over that. How are we doing so far? Huge fan of your, Garrett says, Sci-Fi Helmet did a while ago. A lot of people refer to it here and there. Are you planning to make a new one with the current ZBrush? Yes, I'm always planning on making a bunch of videos, and I never do. So I just have to quit my job and then make a bunch of videos. Yeah, you can email me a link if you like. How do I create a radial array around a specific point? For example, a low poly Z modeler made subtool. That would just be setting your pivot point, I believe. You would go, hey, I have a polymesh star here, and then I'm going to duplicate this star, and on this star, I'm going to go to my array mesh here. We're going to turn on array mesh, and we're going to rotate in the Y amount. Is this Y up? Yeah. Okay, so we can rotate in the Y amount. 360, and then repeat, and then I'm going to go to the top here, and you can go to your pivot point in here and move this pivot point around so you can get a specific point on your low poly mesh wherever that needs to be. If you want to go from the middle, I think Joseph Dress went over that in if you go, I need to rewatch some of these. So I'm gonna link you guys to the Ask ZBrush channel on YouTube here. I'm pretty sure if you just search for array, no, I want to search these videos. Oh, you can't search a playlist. Aldo, A-R-R-A-Y. No, not in there. Actually, that's the first Ask ZBrush. There's two Ask ZBrushes on here. So if you go to the Pixelogic channel and their playlists, Ask ZBrush Volume 2. So there's Volume 1 is what I linked you, and then Volume 2 is this link right here. So I think they've gone over, and in fact I know he has, I'm pretty sure, how to do an array mesh on here. But if you want to not use the pivot, just go to just turn transpose on. And if we hit W and hit Y, we can now use our transpose to set our pivot. So you can put this point wherever you want, and it'll go ahead and do an array mesh around a specific point. Hey, Vladimir, thanks for showing up. Let's see, how do I move align point vertex one subtool? Yeah. One subtool is array. One subtool is a radial array around another subtool, a specific point I want to create my radial array around. As far as like pinpointing that, if you can find the X, Y, and Z, which would be under geometry position, I think, of that point, you could maybe do it. I would tend to just eyeball it mathematically. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you could. I'm not sure if you can snap the pivot to a vertice, but I usually just eyeball it anyways. Move a line of point vertex from one subtool to another point, another subtool. Not sure. Hasn't come up that much. Is there any chance you can run through the basic brush types? Yeah, we can do that real quick. So if I go over here to Sphere 3D, go into edit mode. And we go into, like, I have my hotkeys set up. If you want my hotkeys in this custom menu right here, if you want to follow along with that, you can go to my Gumroad page, and it's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's just where I keep my stuff, or my cube brush page. And you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there's a thing called Intro to ZBrush Files. You can download and install that. But, so if we can turn on X symmetry here, we can go into the clay brush. And this is basically how the clay brush works here. I kind of, in my YouTube channel, I don't specifically call out specific brush types, but if you go to my YouTube playlist here and you go to the Intro to ZBrush Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 has some other stuff in it, but we kind of go over like what H-polish does. So if I use H-polish, let's go ahead and Dynamesh this thing. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, if you're doing stylized stuff, sometimes if you do Dynamesh with polish turned on, as you're Dynameshing, it's going to go ahead and polish it for you. So you can go through here. This is H-polish. I guess we'll just step through some brushes here. It's not really a super standard brush in ZBrush, I suppose, but I use it all the time. So this H-polish respects edges and allows you to kind of make cool forms, and you can hold down Alt to polish up and then let go of Alt to polish down. You need a tablet to use this brush. Don't try using it with your mouse. You're going to have a bad time. It's a very feely brush. You kind of got to get a feel for, but very cool. On the opposite end of the spectrum from that one is Trim Dynamic. You can use Trim Dynamic, and it doesn't respect edges. It clobbers them. So you can go through here. You can add bevels. And then on top of that, Trim Dynamic, you can go through here, and you can just polish this. If you want to select brushes, you can go B, T to get all your trim brushes, narrow down to all your trim brushes, and then Dynamic is D. Then you can just select it that way. You can also go into your brush menu here, hold Control Alt, and then tap on any brush, and then give it a key combination, and that'll assign a hotkey to it. You're going to want to, after you do that, go to Preferences, Hotkeys, Store, and that'll store your hotkeys for you. But back to the clay brush, you can hold down Alt, and you can go through here. There's also stroke types you need to worry about. So for example, if I go to my standard brush is pretty cool. By default, if we go over here to stroke, you're going to see that under lazy radius it's turned to 1, so it's going to kind of smooth your stroke out a little bit by default, but you can't do like dots. It won't let you because it has a little rubber band behind it. So you can take your lazy radius and crank that up, and that'll kind of make that even more apparent. But if you don't like that, just tap L and that'll toggle it off, and now you can go through here and make like little dots. Standard brush, what I'll use for standard brushes, I'll use it to build up forms. However, if you put this too close, it's going to start just grabbing those little pieces next to it. So what I'll tend to do if I'm building forms close together is use more of a clay brush here. So what I'll end up doing with standard brushes, I'll cut in, and I'll take the Z intensity and crank it up. So I'll crank up my Z intensity, and also using the smooth brush. I use smooth stronger. If I hold down Shift and go to our brush settings here, go all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see there's a smooth brush modifiers. Then you're going to see we have a weighted smooth mode. You're going to see 1 is stronger. So you can hold down, I mean, you don't have to hold down Shift. You can just change that. Well, maybe you should. Hold down Shift and change that to 1, and that'll be smooth stronger. Or you can go into your comma key here, go to brush, and you can go to our smooth brushes. And all of these brushes in here are usually just changed by doing the weighted smooth mode, and then you can choose smooth stronger in here. The reason I like smooth stronger is I can smooth stronger. Now, if you don't like it smoothing that much, hold down Shift, drop your Z intensity down, and now you'll smooth a little less. But what I'm basically doing, and also Dam Standard. So this is the Damien Standard brush, and it's got the alpha built in. I use that to kind of dig into surfaces too. And then, let's go ahead and turn off polish for my Dynamesh here. And then what I'll do is I'll go and use the clay brush to kind of build up around those pieces here. So I'll go through here and kind of do this, and you can also hold down Alt on the Damien Standard, or you can use your standard brush and kind of build up an area as well. You can use your clay brush to build up to those edges, like so, and then you can use your H-polish brush to go ahead and polish these up. You can also try, again, like we went over earlier, going into your clay polish and just hitting that, or using your polish modifier on your Dynamesh settings. So you can kind of start doing that stuff. If you want to pull to a corner, so you know how you can use a move brush and kind of pull, or you can use a snake hook brush to kind of pull. You can also use the move brush in conjunction with move acu, and now you can kind of pull these things out to sharper corners here. like so. That's a little bit useful when you're doing just like sculpted detail. Where that is, if you have just your move brush, go to curve, turn on AccuCurve, and now you can just pull out to corners as opposed to AccuCurve off, and that kind of pulls out to a rounded form. There's also the chisel brush here. So if we subdivide this up, drop that Z intensity down a little bit, we got the chisel brush. Now this is similar to the layer brush. So as we're using this chisel brush, you're going to see we're able to take this, and as it can go over previously drawn things as long as I don't lift my brush up, right? However, if I lift my brush up and go back over, it's going to kind of mangle the geometry. So there's two things we need to do here. We need to go over here to our morph target, store a morph target, and now when we drag over, it's great. Another thing we need to do is realize that as we're dragging this out, and then if I get anywhere near, see how I wasn't even close to the end of that and I just started drawing and it snapped it to the end? That is over here underneath your, that's under your stroke. Lazy mouse is turned on, and you're going to see you have a lazy snap set to 40. So that little snapping going back is just an easy way for you to snap to your original position. Now with this brush, if I can go thin to thick to thin, and then if I want to start again, oh, that doesn't really match up very well. So one thing you can do is you can use your mouse, and that will always be 100% on your brush. Or I like to use my tablet. So we're going to go to our brush settings here, tablet pressure, take your size and just crank that up. Now your brush is going to work like a tablet, like so. You can also hold down shift. So as you start drawing, just hold down shift and it'll go all the way. Now if it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, I think if you just go over here and change your lazy radius down to like a small number, and then you just got to be more careful, but when you let go of shift, it'll go all the way down to the bottom of your stroke there, like so. Vector displacement we've gone over. This is where the chisel 3D is just vector displacement. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but again, go to my YouTube channel here. Go to the Intro to ZBrush 4R8 What's New, and that'll walk you through vector displacement, how it works, how you can make your own. All that stuff. Chisel rectangle we've gone over as well. Same spot. You can make a multi-alpha brush here. So instead of like loading up alphas all the time, you can just go through here. And in fact, if we want to have a little bit more fun, brush modifiers, I'm going to set this to multi-mesh selector to 1 so we can cycle through. So I can just select one, and now I can just, as we drag out, it's going to select a different alpha. And you can also hold down Alt with these, like so. And you can also make your own. If you want to just use an alpha, you can go to standard clone. You can just drag a drag dot here, alpha 06, and now you can crank the focal shift down to -100, crank your Z intensity up, and you can just drop in these little details as well. Or you can swap out this alpha. But I prefer to have multiple alphas set up for me. Clay buildup is just like a clay buildup with an alpha in it. Clay tubes is the same way. Clip brushes, and I mean, I go through most of this. The layer brush is similar to the chisel brush in that if we delete the morph target and we go to Z intensity here, you're going to see I can build up a layer, but as soon as I can build up a layer and go back over where I went and just kind of build up as a layer like this, but as soon as I let go, let's go ahead and delete the morph target. As soon as I let go, it's just going to keep building up. However, if I have a morph target with my layer brush, it'll build up, and then it'll build up, and then it'll build up. I can let go. I can just kind of build up into layers like this. I can use this in conjunction with the morph brush. So if I go into BM BMO, you can go through here and you can morph it back. So if we do a Z intensity of 100, you can see I can just morph this thing back. So now we're using the layer brush to build up and then the morph brush to kind of morph back to our original object. You can also go here over here to switch, and then you can use your morph brush to pull up from that layered area that you made. So if you want to use that to kind of clean up your sculpt, you can do that as well. But I think that's most of the basics, besides getting into like because these aren't curve brushes and stuff we went over earlier this morning. Insert mesh brushes, pretty self-explanatory. But again, I go over that in Intro to ZBrush Part 1, I believe. All this stuff, so it's a pretty good overview. It's 6:50 where I am. Texas time. Yeah, I'm not West Coast. You rather use clay brush over clay 2 brush? Almost exclusively. I'm not a huge clay. I mean, I have it in my hotkeys here, so I can kind of build up forms like this. But what I prefer to do if I want harsher shapes, I'll go to my clay brush and just drop in an alpha and crank up the intensity. I just prefer using the clay brush like this than I do the clay buildup. But I've seen really good results with clay buildup. Just not a very feel-good brush for me. I prefer using the clay brush, but your mileage may vary on that one. Ever sculpt fur for games? No, yuck. I mean, it's not difficult to do, especially with the vector displacement. In fact, let me see if I can hunt this down. You go to ZBrush Central, and you go, I guess I can log in, and then go to the gallery here, ZBrush Central Gallery, scroll down to Beta Testers Gallery, and then go to page 4. So I think it was Pablo Munoz Gomez. So he was the one where we went over in my YouTube channel. You're going to see a stylized ZBrush rendering. I went through his ZBrushGuides.com and did that. So you can see this bear right here with the fur. You can use vector displacements, just make a bunch of different vector displacement alphas, and then use those to just make a bunch of cartoon fur sculpted in. If you want your fur to be on card so it can react in, let's say, Unreal or something, you're going to want to use hair cards. You're not going to want to sculpt that in. I know there's been fur sculpting tutorials out there. I want to say we've gone over it before. Check out my YouTube channel. Maybe I think I might have labeled it sculpting fur in one of the other live streams. But it's tedious. Yeah. I mean, yeah, in low res fur, if you want to do indications of fur, oh, there's another really good one. Go to Google and go to, this one's a little bit dated, but if you go to Gorilla ZBrush Fur, you're going to see this thread right here by Fabricio Torres. And if you go back in his, gorgeous sculpted hair. Now this is a very sculpted look, so it's not going to be like fur for like video game fur as far as hair cards. And you can do hair cards in ZBrush with other methods we'll get to in a second. But he has a video for a tutorial on YouTube. You can just follow through on this thing and it'll go through, and it's basically building up your forms and then going through and then smoothing them down. And what I would end up doing is probably go to a vector displacement plane and do a bunch of different shapes like this and then put it together. If you want to get a little bit more control, I would actually make a hair, and I think we've done this, brush, hair. Yeah, make a hair brush, and then you can just drag out a hair curve, and then you can go through here and you can kind of model this thing in, and you can drag out a copy of this one, and you can kind of loop it over and twist it around, and you can kind of create fur like this so that when you go and split that off, you can start getting this kind of look and kind of doing fur just using that. You can also, I suppose, let's go ahead and duplicate this off, and we'll go to ZRemesher, target polygon count of a very low number, depth size down to 0. And you can also use fiber mesh. There's a million different ways to do this. One way is to go in here, use your, so we can hover over a face, we can go to insert nanomesh, hit M, and then we can do a plane 3D. But of course, you're probably going to want to do insert nanomesh on polygroup all, and you're probably going to want to do just a plane that's not filled with divisions. But you can just do fur like this. And then again, just because this is instances, as you move your object around, you can just do fur cards. Or you can go through here and mask, and you can go down here to fiber mesh, preview, modifiers, change that max fibers down quite a bit. Change the, oh boy, it's been a while since I've been in here. Let's see, segments, we can crank up a little bit. Profile 1, and then I guess the width profile is what we're looking for. And also coverage. There we go. And then if you don't want to taper your ends here, that would be scale root set to 1, scale tip set to 1, I think. 1 enter, scale root 1 enter, something like that. And then you can just do hair cards if you want to do a texture through those. This is going to pick up transparency on there, but you can do a texture through that. You can do a star. So you can just have hair cards set up that way, and it goes root to tip on your UVs as well. So that's one way you could do it. And then you can go what am I looking for here? Except, there we go. And now you can use your groom brushes, or just your move brushes here. And if you do use your move brush, you're not going to be able to move the root, because by default, over here under your auto masking, you're going to have auto mask fiber mesh, so it's going to go ahead and mask the root for you, which is kind of nice. That's one way you can do low res fur. That's not sculpted. And I mean, there's so many different ways. You can go in here with alphas. If we go to like brush, I guess we just use like a standard brush with drag. Let's do freehand, and we'll grab one of these. What's a good one? This one maybe? Yeah, you can kind of go in here and kind of sculpt fur. Like those kind of brushes, not really that useful. Maybe this one. Ugh. Another kind of cool one is if you go into your, oh boy, where is this one at? Brush. It's been a while since I've used this one. What am I looking for here? It's the, I think it starts with an S, slash. Your slash brushes here. And you can use any one of these. I'll use /2, and we can go into the alpha menu, and we can go over here. Where are we at? Stroke alpha. Modify. You can do alpha adjust, and if you want to make this a little blurrier in the middle, you can just drag these things apart, and that'll go ahead. Oops. I changed the offset. There you go. So you can kind of blur that up, and then you can use this to kind of sculpt fur as well. Might be interesting. A lot of different ways. And like I said, just make an alpha where you can just use the brush. I think we made one. Like load a fur alpha in here that you sculpted, or just do a vector displacement, and then you can just drag out a bunch of fur cards. It will change this to the drag rect. You can just kind of drag out fur shapes. Texturing in ZBrush for simple assets like rocks. I'd probably use Spotlight. So if I go to texture, grab import a rocks texture that you really love. Let's say we really love that rocks texture. And then we select it, open it up in here, and then now you'll have rocks in here. And then you can hit Z, and then you can go into your standard brush, and then you can turn on RGB, and now you can just paint rocks on your object here. There was something special about paintbrush. Paint. I'm not sure what this thing does. Doesn't look like it. I wonder if they put in. Okay, so that's probably a gross asset to be using for this anyway. Let's go back to Polyplane 3D, make Polymesh 3D. And we'll go ahead and start polypainting here. I guess it just kind of gives you a nice kind of fall off here. One thing I went over is under the brush menu, you now have smooth brush modifiers, no. Alpha and texture, you have this, well, low and high magnify, but you also have, polypaint mode, so you can do colorize just like Photoshop. And then you have a, oh, I thought it was in here. Where is that at? There's a streak option in here. I never use it, but depending on what you're working on, it could be really useful. Shoot, where did it go? Let me think. Got to be depth. I don't know where it is, but go to my videos that are recorded on this and explain it, and that'll take you through. You can add like little streaky end to your brush, and that'll kind of make it look like an oil paint brush. I'm just assuming that's what this brush is trying to do, or something like that. Benefits of using layer in ZBrush. When should I use it? For example, if you want to do something like a Nick Z humanoid, and you want to store a layer for arms up, or arms side to side, or mouth open, for doing variants, is what I would probably use it for mostly. Cool. Yeah, look at Yibing Jiang at Naughty Dog with the fur on her art station. Cool. How to make size optimal meshes using booleans, because using it with dynamic subdivisions generated 30 million poly piece. Do I need to remove all subdivisions before pressing make boolean? I would say only if you have a super complex object and you're using smooth subdivisions to get the look you want, you're going to have a 30 million polygon object at the end of the day. Even if you're modeling it in any other package, if you're using subdivisions or sub-D surfaces and you're using booleans, eventually if you want to export that, it's going to have to convert it to something usable, unless you keep it in that program and you use live boolean and you're just rendering in ZBrush, for example. What I tend to do, and I work very conservatively when it comes to ZBrush and poly counts. I don't just throw massive amounts of subdivision surface on here. So we go M here, and we go to a cube. Actually, let's just grab a plain old cube here. Let's go ahead and split that off. So I've got a start group here. I've got this one as a subtractive mesh here. And I've got my renderer turned on. So for this one, for example, on this cube, if I go to geometry and I do dynamic, and it's like, okay, I want to really smooth this thing. Like if you go to smooth subdivisions of 7 on this one, and then smooth subdivisions of 7 on this one, when it does its actual geometry count, it's going to be in the millions. So I would just crank this up only as much as you need to. Like this one just needs 1, probably, maybe 2, and then this one in here, depending on what you're going for, might need more, but try to keep it as low as possible to get your point across on your bakes. Speaking of baking, we probably should get to that. I only have another hour left here. So another thing you can do is when you're using QGrid, instead of cranking the QGrid up to like 8 and then doing QGrid like this to get this look, you can keep your QGrid pretty low, like 3, and get the same kind of look, maybe 4, depending on what you're going for here. But you know, just keep your settings as low as possible so that when you do merge everything together, it doesn't make it so high resolution. But there's no way around it once you want to make real resolution and export it. As far as I know, there's no tricks to being like completely optimize my mesh on my Boolean services before I export, to my knowledge. And yeah, if you did want the smooth look, which I assume you probably do, yeah, you need dynamic turned on, and then make Boolean mesh, and then that's your U mesh here. And this one's 124,000, but in order to get it to smooth like I wanted to for baking purposes, that's kind of what I needed to put in there. You could reduce it from here using Decimation Master is one of the ways you could maybe do it. If you just want to export it, might not be great for baking necessarily, but you can go to Decimation Master here, pre-process. And then once you've got that, you can do like decimate this down to like 10K polys. Still get the same shape. Or if you don't like that, since we've already pre-processed, we can say, oh, you know what, I want 20K. Hit enter, and then decimate current, or 50K. So you can kind of dial in the number like that. So now this is 50K instead of 128,000. Way to create and export a specular channel mask in ZBrush. Yeah, that would just be a poly paint. So go through here. I mean, you can't, it's not like this isn't like a PBR painting package. You just do that in Painter. But if you wanted to, let's say you had, it would just be a poly paint mask you would paint in. And it wouldn't be like, oh, let me paint some specular and see how the light rolls off the object. That's not what ZBrush is for. But you can go through here and just start painting. And then this would be your specular map. When you go to, if this had UVs, you would just go from texture map, create new from polypaint, and it would throw it into your UVs. And then you could just export that as your specular map. But it's not like a real live feedback thing. We'll be doing that when we go into Painter. You'll see more of that. That would be useful. Yeah, Clawsim I would like. But, okay, so let's see. So we went through and we painted this thing up, right? And now we want to go through and make a game res for this and export it. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'll be going over more methods on my YouTube channel. But for just a quick and dirty iteration side for ZBrush, what I would do is we've got this all done. We got this all renamed. All you got to do is go into rename and type in. You're going to see what I'm doing as I'm typing in the name underscore hi, and in ZBrush 408 you can just do underscore. You don't have to do alt shift underscore or whatever the key combo was. And we're just going to export this. In order to export this so we can bake it all, so what we can do is we can bake each one of these separately so we don't get baking errors. So I'm going to go to the FBX export and visible, smooth normals. You always want to have smooth normals turned on when you're doing high resolution exports. We're going to go to export here, and we'll just throw it into pistol. Throw this in the demo bake, and we'll call this pistol high FBX. That's going to go through and export everything on here as an FBX file. The FBX will have the vert color that's going to bake to a matte ID later. And after this, we're going to make our game res. And I'm going to hop into Maya really quick, just because it's a little bit easier to kind of control my low res meshes. But before we do that, you can drop this 30 million polygon thing into Maya, but you're not going to be able to do much with it. At least, I mean, I say that. We'll get to that later in a later video. But basically, wait for this to export here. It's going to take a while. It's not going to take 15 minutes. It's going to take a few minutes to export this because there's a lot of polygons going on here. What difference between a principal artist and a lead artist? So, in my understanding, is you have two tracks. So what happens in a lot of industries, engineering and a lot of different places, you're going to have a lead, or you're going to have an artist track, and you're going to go from artist to senior artist to super senior artist, and then from there, if you want to keep going and progressing, you're going to have to go into a managerial role. And a lot of times what that ends up leading to is you're just getting promoted into a position where you become ineffective. And I've seen that happen a lot of times where you take your best artist, and in order to make him feel like he keeps progressing, you shoot him over to management, and then he's the world's worst manager because he doesn't have interest in management, and he doesn't have the management mindset or the tools or anything to kind of be a good manager. So you take in strike two, you just lost your best artist and put him into meetings and doing stuff that he's not necessarily good at. So you basically promoted them to a level of ineffectiveness. So what companies are starting to do now, and it's not just art, but it's a lot of different positions. What they're starting to do now is do dual tracks, so you can keep the artist progressing, and you can still be in a leadership role as a principal artist, but you just won't be in a necessarily like approving PTO kind of role, or going and scheduling, or any of the leadership, the lead artist role type things. And that ends up being a lot of the managerial bookkeeping. So if you want to keep your really good artists progressing and doing really cool artist type things and still being a leader on the art side, but not spending most of their day with their monitor turned to the side and doing scheduling tasks and managerial bookkeeping, you turn them into an artist track. So you go up the artist track, and then you go into a principal artist as opposed to a lead artist. Principal artist, let's see if this is exported. Okay, it exported. That could change from company to company as far as the description, but that's my understanding. We're going to be baking today. We're going to be baking in Substance, but you can certainly use XNormal. It's just a little bit easier for me to bake in Substance with this workflow that I'm doing. So now that we have that all baked out, what we're going to do is go ahead and make our game res. So in order to make this game res and stuff go faster, what we could do, we don't need our polypaint anymore. We've already exported that. So now what we can do is, let's go to matcap gray here. So we've got this thing here, and we want to make low res meshes out of all this just really quickly. And you also want to voxelize some of this stuff, because you're going to see this whole piece right here is a bunch of different pieces, and we're just going to bake this detail in. We don't need to have these things as actual separate pieces of geo. So one thing you can do in ZBrush is to go in here and you can say turn off project, turn off blur, and just dynamesh all this together. Now you're going to want to choose a correct resolution, so we'll choose like 1600 and dynamesh. There we go. And we can just dynamesh this together. In fact, we're going to do a little bit lower, because we'll do like 1064. All we're looking for is this basic shape. So you don't want any like holes kind of built in between these shapes here. You want it to kind of just give me a nice envelope. And in fact, we might even be able to go lower. But now that I've determined that 1000 is about where I want to be, I'm going to use zRepeat to go ahead and voxelize every single subtool that's visible in here. Same thing for this one. I don't want all these separate pieces. I don't want to do a game res of this little screw over here. I want to just dynamesh all this together, create an envelope, and then reduce it down into a usable game res mesh. So let's do that for all of our meshes. How we're going to do that is F. There we go. How we're going to do that for all of our subtools here is we're going to go to zRepeat. Where's that at? That's under our Z plugin. zRepeat. And you're going to see we have a bunch of different things we can store in here. So we're going to record a new one. So we're going to take this one here. We're going to go down here, and we're going to go down to our Dynamesh here. So for this one that's selected, we're going to record new. And we're going to say project is off. We're going to turn blur down to 0. We're going to take our resolution, and we're going to put in 1000, and we're going to hit Dynamesh. And then we're going to hit end record. We'll call this Dynamesh 1000. So now we can do that to visible, and everything that's visible is going to be dynameshed at 1000 for us. The other cool thing about this is it's going to give us a very consistent poly resolution across all of our subtools. So when we go to decimate this thing, we can decimate them all at the same time. So now you're going to see when we choose this one, it's all one mesh, and this is actually probably not ideal, but that's okay. I didn't break that up as well as I could have. All this piece, none of this stuff's going to animate, so we just basically made an envelope for this entire thing here. And then this thing here could possibly animate, you know, if we had a magazine in there. So it's one way we could do it. But, you know, do a good job when you break this thing up. This is kind of off the cuff. So now that we have this all dynameshed as an envelope, again, if we go back to the trigger you're going to see it's all just one nice envelope here. So now we can decimate this all down. So what we can do is we can look up at our total points here is 1.671 million. And let's say I want to get this down to, say, 25,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Decimation Master, and we're going to go to Preprocess All. And that's just going to go through, instead of doing preprocess one at a time, we can prepress all of them, and then we can decimate all of them at the same time with the same percentage, and then it will drop it down and keep everything consistent. Let's see, it shouldn't take too long. Yeah, well, let's go and let's see. Hey, Thunder Bunny, thanks for showing up. So NLTMW says same thing happens in engineering consulting companies. Good technical people don't usually make good managers. They usually aren't happy there. Yeah, and again, that just goes back to being promoted to ineffectiveness. You know, so hopefully the dual track ends up working out. I like it better. What do you think about Mari if you haven't used it before? I have used it before. It's been a while though, so I'd hate to spout off a bunch of things about Mari that I'm really not too educated on anymore, but it was a good program, especially if you're doing just hand painting high resolution stuff. It's great for cinematics and film especially. For me, Substance Painter's hard to beat for game res assets just because of the massive amount of generators and PBR export options, and it even supports UDIMs now. So, but it's a very, very good program. Hand planes of breaker similar Xnormal has the match mesh by name feature. The substance and null, that's free too. That's another good one. Okay, so we've got this all pre-processed here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to type in our percent of decimation. So let's do a little bit of math here. Let's see if I remember. Whoa, that's a big calculator, Windows. So we're going to go, I want to say this is going to be 25,000 polygons. We're going to divide that by 1,671,000, and that's going to give us, so we're going to go ones, so tens, hundreds, 1.4% is what we're going to decimate this down to. So we're going to go 1.4, enter, hit decimate all, and that'll go through and decimate all these things down to give me a net result of the poly count I'm looking for, I hope. For voxelizing, would you be considering a poly count of this gun for game, or does that come later for retopologizing? This is what I'm doing, is I'm making a game res mesh right now. Mike, not a chance regarding the Discord channel, right? Shoot, let me see. Do I have Discord on here? I keep forgetting about that. Let me see if I can just log in through the internet. Discord. Open Discord in my browser. I don't remember my username. Give me a second. While that's going through here. There we go. Let me launch it through here. Oh, hold on. It's saying it won't let me. I gotta, okay, verify login. Yay. Okay, so I am on Discord. I'm never actually really on there though. I don't even know how it works. Like everybody's like, I should be on Discord. And I'm like, great, I'm on Discord. And so let's see. ZBrush Live Presenter. Online. Friends. Where the hell am I at? Me. Member list? No. New things, I swear. I like learning new things for like, oh, here we go. I'm number 6909. I don't know how to make this bigger. I wonder if I could just send this screenshot out to you guys. Does this make sense? Let me see, can I zoom in on this? Pav Mike, number 6909. That's what I am. I try to read all the comments. So again, if I miss your comment or if I miss, any questions that you bring up, just keep shouting them out and I'll try and get to it. So for instance, did it go through? Okay, so yeah, we've reduced this thing. So now you can see our total points is down to 23,000. So I think we're looking pretty good. We got all this ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and export all this. If you want to see the entire low res, you can just do merge visible. That'll shoot out another one here. So let's see, we got body high, merge. There we go. So here's all our pieces. There's our game res. So we've got our game res here. So again, I'm just going to export this one again using FBX export. And we have our pistol high. We'll call this pistol low. We're going to do a little bit of Maya work. So we're going to swap on over to Maya. I'm going to file, and you can use any program to do this. I've just been using Maya. Every single project I've ever been on for the past 12 years has been a Maya pipeline backbone for everything. Every company I've worked for, every company I've worked third party for, always been a Maya backbone. So I'm going to go to, where's our stuff? Pistol, demo bake, pistol low, import it, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and select all these, and let's go ahead and just do assign an existing material. We're just going to throw Lambert on there for now. Let's go into, I'm going to hit the space bar. We're going to go to Windows, rendering editors, Hypershade. Go to edit, delete unused nodes, and now we're just back to where we start. Let's go ahead, while we're in here, let's hit Lambert, control, double tap that, and we're going to call this pistol. And now let's go ahead and assign existing material pistol to that. You could have also done that and just dragged it on there or right-clicked assigned, but we're in good shape. So we've got our pistol here. This is a very small pistol, so I hope it bakes okay. It should bake okay. That's okay. So we got this here. Now we've got trigger, barrel, all this stuff here. So there's a couple things we need to do. Number one, we need to ensure that, I'm going to select all these. I'm going to hit 1. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to, I don't have these. So I'm going to go to, which is okay. So 2 things I need to do is I need to go to normals. And I usually have buttons for these. So give me a second here. So surface, no. Mesh tools, edit mesh. Is there a normal section in here? Mesh tools, mesh. Ugh, combine, transfer, mesh display, geez, normals. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Control Shift. I'm going to go to unlock normals. I'm going to set to face, and I'm going to soften the edge. So I'm going to unlock my normals, set the face, give it a second, and I'm going to soften all my normals here. So it's going to average all of those normals. Next thing we need to do is UV this thing. So I'm going to go to UV, and I'm just going to do automatic. Why would you do automatic? It's garbage UVs. Because I don't care. And then we're going to go over here, and we're going to go to mesh, clean up, and we're going to say clean up selected polygons. We want to clean up faces more than 4 sides, faces with probably those lamina faces, non-manifold geometry, edges with 0 lengths, faces with 0 geometry area. Hit clean up. Select all this, go to UVs, UV editor, UV toolkit. We can just, doesn't this go in here? Oh boy. All right, fine, whatever. So we got our UV editor here, we've got our UV toolkit. I'm gonna go down here to arrange or layout, and let's do layout. Select as non-manifold geometry. Fix it. Try to fix it first for you, but looks like it'll fix it again. And now that I mention it, I bet what it didn't do. Okay. Oh man, it's been so long since I've been in here. So we're gonna go to modify. We're gonna go to our layout settings here. Let's see if I can figure this out. We need to make sure that our pre-scaling is preserving 3D ratios. So when I lay this out, it's going to go through and look at the size of my objects and scale the UVs accordingly. There you go, something like that. We also need a little bit of padding here. Let me see if I can do that real quick. So we're going to go to Modify, Layout, Packing Iterations, Packing Resolution. What am I looking for? Here we go. Shell padding. So let's say we're going to go bake to a 2048, and we want the shell padding to be like 4 pixels. And then that'll give us a little bit of breathing room around our shells there. And that's just for like if you're MIPing out to an LOD, it'll give you a little bit more breathing room. And this auto UV did a really like glaringly awful job. We'll see if this even works. Usually I get a slightly better, oh, you know what? Oh, okay, we might be working at a bad scale here. I was like, this is a really terrible result. I might have to rethink this. With the new cleanup, kind of did a terrible job. Let me see. Let me see if I can just UV this one. Yeah, so it did fine. So why is it chewing up my mesh that badly? Mesh, cleanup, non-manifold geometry. Layout. Now it's going to work. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is like a disaster. Because yeah, when it fixes my quote-unquote non-manifold geometry for the UV layout, it's doing a really, really awful job. Well, what we can do pistol high. Ooh, do I not have a pistol low? Give me a second. And the only reason I'm really doing this is so that I can set the face, soften edges. And so that I can just soften my edges and just give it some temporary UVs. Mesh. Yeah, that cleanup is doing something really nasty, which it shouldn't be doing. Let's check that out. Mesh, cleanup. Unless I had something really bad in my source geometry here. So if we go to save and delete, no. Oh, you know what? It might just be a scale thing. Let me try this. All right. UV editor. So I am working, this is a ZBrush scale, so let's see. There we go, much better. So it was an edges 0 length thing. I guess when you're working on a scale this long, this small, it's going to consider these small edges 0 length. So thanks, Maya. Anyway, we got this thing. It's working fine. If you want to, you can change these to low. I don't think it matters that much. I think Painter will still respect the names and group them together correctly. But we'll go ahead and swap it out just in case, just to do it nice. Anyway, here we go. One thing we need to redo rendering editors, Hypershade. And we'll go ahead and make a new Lambert. We'll call it Control, double click, pistol. And then this time what we'll do is we'll select all these and we'll right click pistol, say assign material selection. So now we've got a pistol here. We're going to go to File, Export Selection, and pistol demo bake. You need to go to FBX. Like, where is it? Oh, there's a new AS export. That's nice. FBX pistol low. Let's go through. We don't want a smooth mesh. Tangents and binormals, I think, is the only thing we need to turn on. Go to export. There we go. So now we're going to hop over to Substance Painter. File, new. We're going to select pistol demo bake, pistol low. So there's our pistol. And now we're going to go to texture settings, bake textures, and we're going to say 2048. We're going to grab our high poly here, and we're going to go to normals. We're going to say mesh by mesh name. Same thing for ambient occlusion, mesh by mesh name. I think that should be fine. So we're going to hit bake pistol textures. Whew. Sorry about that. Let's see. That's fine. I'll get it on Facebook. I can't promise a super speedy response, but yeah, baking into Substance. Mesh display, got it. Yeah, exactly. 2018. I go 20. I thought I was doing pretty good in 2017, and then 2018 comes around, and it's good. I'm glad they're updating stuff, but I just don't use Maya that much, so I kind of stumble around now. This method can use character modeling topology too. Sure. I'm sure the animators will yell at you, but you could try it. Let's see. Oh. So this type of shoulder pad would be even easier. It's just, I mean, you could follow along in that shoulder pad thing I sent you, and then all the stitching would be done with an insert mesh brush or an insert curve brush, and then this fur would just be lining it, which we go over in the video as well, and then just using fur sculpting. That'd take you probably 5 or 6 minutes to block it out, and then another 15 to detail up. Cool. Glad everything's working out for you guys. I'm glad the videos are helping. Hopefully, let's see, this was Stefan the Artist. Yeah, so I just went over that one. So tangents and binormals, I'm not really sure. That's just what they tell me at work to check on, specifically Andrew Morris. There we go. Thank you, Danielle. Trying to think. There's a lot of other things. We'll get into some of those. Now I'm all. Oh, there we go. There you go. Got it. Okay, so we baked our gun here. So here we got our nice normals on here. It actually baked our mesh ID. Yay! There was a bug. If your mesh ID doesn't bake, let's go ahead and go up to 2048. If your mesh ID doesn't bake for some reason, when you go to bake texture, just turn everything off but mesh ID and then bake it again, and it'll go ahead and grab it. Oh yeah, we baked to 2048. So, okay, so now we can just start texturing this thing. So let's go over here to our smart materials. And if you're not aware, you can go to what's it called? Live Substance. No, it's Substance Share. Share.allegorithmic.com. You can go in here. You can download a bunch of smart mass, smart materials. If you want, you can also go here to meshes. I think I've got a couple in here. Here's one. My GDC FPS female is in here. If you want this as like a test asset, you can throw this into Painter and you can paint her up all you want. So we're in here and we're in our smart materials here. You can close that out. And we got, what do we want to use? We're going to go to steel dark, maybe. We'll just drag that out here. And we'll use this as our base. So we'll just have a steel dark base that everything can kind of sit on top of. So on top of that, we have steel gun painted. We can put on some painted steel gun. We can throw that on here. If we want this to go on just a specific area, a couple different ways we can do that. We can right click, do mask by color selection, pick color, and you can say, you know what, I want this to be gun steel painted. So now it's going to be nice and painted. If you want it to look super duper while you're in here, go to your display settings, you can activate post effects and anti-aliasing. Go to your viewer settings, you can turn on shadows with like an intensive computation, and that'll just give you a really nice look as you're working. I usually just have all this stuff turned off while I'm working. So what else we need? We need some rubber in here. If you want to just make a material, you can certainly do that. So if you go over here, we can make a new folder. We'll call this rubber, and in here we'll say I'm going to add a fill layer, and then that fill layer will drag in here, and we'll call this rubber base. And of course this rubber has to go on a specific area, so I'm going to right click here, add mask selection, and we're just going to add this to, you know what, we shouldn't add it there. We'll add it here. This will be rubberized, and then this will be plastic. Speaking of plastic, you can just go through here and you can search plastic, and now you can have like, oh, plastic matte, plastic rubber. You can just choose from here, plastic used up. We'll use plastic used up. Right click, add mask color selection, go ahead and pick, and we'll throw it on here. Now this used up plastic, what we can do is we can modify this base plastic here. We'll just drop that to like a dark here. And then you're going to see there's wear on here. That's just a white base color. We're going to drop that down as well, make that a little less obvious. And then you can go to the wear here. And this is going to be a mask editor that you can choose. You want a lot of wear, you can dial that up, or if you want very little wear, you can dial that in. So you can kind of change that. So we're doing the same thing for our rubber here. We're just going to kind of do our own thing. So we're going to take the rubber base, and we're going to say this color is going to be pretty dark rubber, right? You can change the roughness, like so. We can kind of make it a little bit shiny here. If you want to, you can also go in here to your grunges, and you can say, you know what, I want to grunge up that roughness. And that'll go ahead and break up that roughness. What I tend to do, though, is leave that roughness on a separate layer. So I would go and make a new fill layer here. We call this roughness break up. And then I can just drag a grunge onto this roughness, and then we can kill color, metal, normal, and height, because I only want this roughness breakup to affect my roughness here. So you can see we're getting that. Under the roughness breakup, you're going to see we have UV projection turned on, and we have terrible UV, so I'm going to go to triplanar projection, and that's going to make our seam seamless. And now we can go into our base color and change out the roughness, and we can drop this opacity down. And we can just like dial in just a little bit of roughness breakup on that rubber, just to kind of give it a nice rubber look. If you want this rubber base to kind of be worn on the edges, what we can do is we can Control D to duplicate this rubber base. We'll call this rubber wear. And I'm going to lighten this a little bit. Well, let's lighten it now so we can see what we're doing when we put the correction on it. I'm going to lighten it way too light. We're going to make it white. So now what we can do is we can right click this, and we'll add a generator. And for this rubber wear, our generator will be metallic edge wear. So we got this, we got rubber wear on here, and rubber wear, roughness breakup. So under rubber wear, we want the rubber wear to be kind of rough, and it's also, if we click on the MG metal edge wear here, actually, you know what, let's kill that. I forgot. We need to add a black mask. So that's going to make it so that the rubber wear is only going to show up in places where we paint it. So you can paint a white mask where the rubber wear is, and it'll go ahead, and if you want to see that, you can hold down Alt, and you can see the mask that we're painting. Now, because we did the folder for rubber selection is only allowing it to show up in these areas, that's why I can overpaint here, and it's only going to show up in the place where we have our color selection there. I'll right click this to add a black mask, and I'll go ahead and add that as well. Just kind of reset us. So now what I can do is I want this rubber wear to show up just where it's worn. So now on this mask I can do the add a generator, and now we're going to do, oops, we'll do MG, let's go ahead and kill that. We'll do MG metal edge wear. So now if I take this and change the wear level, you're going to see it's just going to kind of show up where the edges are kind of worn. And now we can start dialing in the properties of this material. So I'm going to click back on the material here. We can go, you know, it's a little light. Now if I go too dark, you're not going to see it. So I'm just going to say, oh, I want it to be a little bit lighter here. You can also change the material properties. If you want to make it more rough, or if you want to make it shiny, you can make it shinier where it's worn. But more likely it's going to be rough where it's worn, and then on the rubber base, maybe a little shinier on the rubber base. So as it kind of wears, it gets a little more matte. So that's kind of just an easy way to do rubber wear on here. If you want to, and you want to assign this to more places, just go up to that color selection, say pick color, and you can assign it to all the blue parts if you want to. If you don't want to do that, we can also add a paint here, and you can just manually go in and paint where you want your rubber to go. You can also use the selection up here, and you can go, I want to select an entire object to white, and I'm going to paint this entire thing back here rubber. Even though it was blue along with everything else, I can go ahead and add that there. If you want to paint decals on here, let's go ahead and make a new fill layer. Call this decal white paint, and we can add the folder for this here, so we can throw this in there. And this fill layer here, let's say for this, we'll call this decals all. So we got decal white in here. I'm going to add a black. I want the decals to be able to go anywhere, so I'm not going to change the folder, but I am going to add a black mask for this white decal. And now I can go through here and paint white decals on here. If you're going to see I'm in perspective mode, I can go over here to orthographic view. I can snap to the side, and I can do just like paint some stripes on this thing here. And then I can go through here. I can hit X to toggle, and then I can just clean this up like so. In fact, let's go ahead and just do here, hold down Shift. Very similar to ZBrush. There you go. So we can kind of put a little paint on there. Now you're going to see the paint doesn't wear on the corners. We can go ahead and wear this paint down if we want to. So what we can do is we can add a generator to our decal white. And this generator, again, will do metal edge wear. Now, it's going to go ahead and kill our metal edge wear. So in order to get it to see it, we need to change this to multiply. And now our paint is only showing up where it should be wearing it out. So we're going to go ahead and do invert on. And now when we paint, and we'll change this wear level down just a bit. There we go. So now when we paint on this decal white, it'll automatically wear on all the corners. So wherever there's corner wear, and actually let's make this decal all the way on top of everything. So wherever we paint this thing, it'll go ahead, see where it's already automatically wearing on the corners. And you can also dial in on this here, more grunge. So you can do more wear level. You can also change the grunge amount so it even wears even more just along the middle. So again, as we're painting, it's automatically wearing on the corners for us. And let's go ahead and crank up that grunge level as well. I like that. Grunge. Nope, that was under not plastic. Oh, did we move that? Hold on. I undid back too far. There we go. Wear level. And then grunge. Yeah, totally nasty. You can also go through here and change it back to base color here. And you can even change the opacity of this just to kind of dumb it down just a little bit. Cool. So you can do that kind of painting. You can also go in here, for example, let's go to procedurals, and you're going to see we have some text in here. So I think it's under procedurals. Could have sworn. Maybe not. That won't be under textures. Alphas. There we go. So under alphas, we have a bunch of different types of text. So what I tend to do when I want to paint text on something, you can, if you're just to have a brush selected, you can go through here and you can just paint. And you can hold down Control. And I wish Photoshop had this, Control and left click, and you can just paint stamp. Another thing you can do is you can throw this into a, let's change that font here. You can stamp that anywhere. Another thing you can do is you can throw this into a Projection. So while we're painting on this decal here, you can hit 3. That'll go into projection mode, and you can drag anything in there. You can drag this in here, and it'll just tile it. So you can hit S, and then move this down, and then move this model behind it, and you can just very carefully, you can hold down S and rotate it if you want to, and you can just move this back here, and you can paint this stuff in. But of course you can swap this out with anything, so we can go to Substance, drag this in, and then tap S and hold down Shift, and S and right click to make it bigger. And now you can just paint through here, and you can pick and choose. Let's go hold down Control and drag all the way up, and then Control and drag to the left. And if you want to, you could just do like, oh, I want to do BS because I'm going to label my gun. So you can take little, and you can also, I forget to mention this, you can change the letters too. So we're going to be like, test text. So we can change our text here, and then we can hold down S and, oh, you know what? It's not centered. Let me see if I can do size here. Oh, it is, but for some reason the exclamation points turned into something weird, but that's fine. So now we can go type in test here. And if you want to do embossed text, what we can do is we make a new layer, add a black mask, and on this one we're going to turn off everything except for height. So now as I'm going onto this mask and I'm typing this in, if we go over here and change the height to a negative value, you're going to see it's going to go ahead and punch in for us. So we can continue. So as we're embossing this text here, we put a test here, test. And the cool thing about doing this method is we go back to 1, you can change on the fly the height. So if you wanted to bump out, just change the height value. Or if you want to bump way in, change that. So it's all completely non-destructive. If you don't like it, just go back in here, and we'll go back to our brushes here. We'll do like a default hard, hit X, and let's go ahead and paint that out. Or you can paint out little pieces of it. So you can go through here, you can paint. Let's go back to our perspective view here. And if you want to get a nicer render, if you want to do emissive as well, let's go ahead and do another fill layer here. We'll call this emissive. I misspelled it. Capital M, you get the idea. And we can go over here to our texture settings. We need to add an emissive channel. So we're going to go to plus emissive. So now we have an emissive channel. On this emissive one, we're going to turn off everything but emissive. And for the emissive color, we'll just choose yellow. Again, we're going to add a black mask. We're going to go back into orthographic. And let's say we want to make these emissive. We can just paint right in here. Our emissive. There we go. So now when we turn on, and you can change these values as well. So if you want it to be like more of an orangey, whatever you want to do. And now you can go back to your display settings here, and you can do color correction, all that good stuff. We'll go back here and we'll turn our shadows back on. So now as we're kind of texturing this thing, and we'll go back here and we'll do our orthographic view. Do it. Oh, not orthographic, perspective. So here's our perspective view here. So we're kind of getting this look here. One other thing you can do is you can go over here and hop into iRay. And this is going to be kind of like a key shot render. So we can go over here, we can go to environment map, we can go ahead and change it to whatever you want. We'll put it in like a little desert kind of look here. And if you don't want to, you want to light with the environment, but you don't want to see it, you can go over here to our dome, click that open, and you can say, just give me a clear color. You can also raise the ground a little bit if you want it to just kind of sit on the ground. You can kind of dial in exactly where that ground should go. You can hold down Shift, and just like in Painter, you can rotate your lighting around however you'd like. What else? You can do depth of field if you want. There's a post. iRay depth of field has it. So we'll go back to iRay. Let's see if I remember how to do this. So viewer settings, clear color, ground, glossiness visible from below. I think, is it just Control, right click, Control, Shift right click, Control right click, Control middle mouse. That'd be Control middle mouse. And then we'll go to our You can also turn on reflectivity if you want it to reflect in the ground here. And the glossiness of that, so you can get kind of a reflection of the gun here. Trying to remember, it's been a while. Viewer settings. You can crank your emissive intensity up. I'm trying to think if the where in the hell we have the not sure. Let's go ahead and turn this off. We'll throw this in the garage. Corsica. Oh, do we not have a garage in here? I thought we did. Oh, there it is, bus garage. There we go. Nice little bus garage render. And we'll go ahead and turn on, or turn reflectivity down to 0. Makes sense? Everybody still good? The only question I saw for you, Stefan, is the shoulder pad model on ArtStation. Don't you need a cage to make normals in Painter? Nah. You recall the name of the shoulder pad video? Yeah, I linked it earlier. It should just be, if you go to my Livestream highlights here, I'm going to link to you. Scroll down until you see a big shoulder pad. And now, of course, I can't see it. I wanted to say it was like around video 12. I guess it also depends on the sorting. Yeah, so video 14 in there, making a stylized helmet, modeling stylized shoulder pads, 15. We go over that stuff. So Danielle says, normal tangent by tangent to your base. You can think of them as XYZ axis for all your polygons so that the GPU knows how to interpret the normal map and apply it to the polygons. So your tangent space normals applied to your polygons, it determines that. Inner smoothing against the polish washes. And then for the material IDs, Nick Gorain, when this is posted on YouTube, you'll be able to go back and rewind, but it's basically just color fill in ZBrush. And you could also do it in here. You can paint your material IDs in Substance Painter and then just export that as a texture map and re-import it as your material ID. So you can actually do it object-based if you'd like. Yes, edgeware, yeah, John. Edgeware is based on the curvature map. And also like dirt. So let's hop out of here real quick. Is that what this is? No. Get me out of here. So for example, if you want to, there's a couple different things I would maybe do on this one. I would call one maybe oil. And on here, I would turn off everything but roughness. And we would make this roughness really shiny and then add a black mask. And then in here, I would hold down control and then make this control and down as the hardness. And we can also go in here to flow and just drop that way down. You can also make the flow pin pressure. So you can go through here and you can kind of put in places where guns get oiled around these little places here, anywhere where it kind of rotates or things get cleaned. You can just dial in a little bit of oil kind of dripping down. You can also do heat distress if you just do a layer like this. You can just go through and paint, and we're just going to be painting color. We're not going to change any of the other attributes. So when you go in here and paint color, and again, we'll change. We got our flow down, pin pressure. So you can go through here, and you can say like, okay, paint, and it probably wouldn't be red. So let's grab our color. We'll just keep this open. So it'd be like, you know, heat distress. You can sometimes go from like a little bit of orange to a little bit of blue to a little bit of purple. You know, and you can kind of just start dialing that in, and then we can drop that opacity down. So you can kind of start doing a little bit of painting, just doing a color variance on there. But we talked about oil. Another one is dirt. So we can throw in a dirt layer here. And dirt will use your curvature map and your AO. So for our dirt, we're going to make this, I don't know, dirt color, I suppose. And then dirt isn't usually very glossy unless it's muddy, so I'm going to take the roughness and crank it up. So we have just a matte dirt here. And again, we're going to add a black mask. And you can do, instead of doing a generator, you can go over here to smart masks. And you can say dirt dry, dirt complex, dirt dusty, dirt heavy. We'll just grab dirt dry. We'll just drag that on here. And then you can go through here at the mask editor and you can say, knock that dirt back a little bit. Or, like I did before, you can right click this, add a generator, and then we can just grab MG dirt, and then you can just dial in these dirt levels here. So you can say, make a very unkept, oops, hit M, very unkept dirty gun here. And if it's, speaking of, if you hit C, that'll cycle through all the channels here. So you can go, here's your base color map, here's your metallic, here's your roughness, here's your normal, here's your height, here's your emissive, and then here's your normal map, and then hit M to go back to material. So now we've got a dirty gun. And then we want to go to export your textures here, Control Shift E, you can go to configuration, and you can make your own configuration, or you can just choose one of these presets and say we want to export this to V-Ray. Just choose V-Ray, pistol, document sizes, your texture sets. You can actually make it a little bit higher if you want to, and then you can hit export, and it'll export those as, like if you want to do a targa, you can change that, tell it where to go, and that's about it. You just got to go plug it in. How did you carve out or extrude text in SB? Have a good day. That would just be making a layer here, calling it, I don't know, height or carve. If you're just doing height, just turn off everything but height, drop it down, add a black mask, and then as you're going through here with your brushes, and let's go ahead and change this real quick. Displace viewer settings, bus garage, we'll change it back to our panorama. And now wherever you paint, it'll go ahead and paint down, and then you can go change your height value from in to out. And if you want to not paint down, you can hit X, that'll toggle that, and then you can just paint that back up. So it's kind of like using the layer brush and the morph brush and ZBrush. You can also do a layer like this, we'll call it normal detail. We'll turn off everything but the normal map. We'll go over here to our hard surfaces, and then we'll just choose this one. And under normal, we'll just drag that in there. And we'll make our opacity and our flow better than that. Crank our flow up. There we go. So now you can just stamp normal detail on there. And you can change this out to whatever you want. We can make little pluses. Some of, oops. Here, brush. Where's our normal? There it is. Some of these things, if you do like plus, I think, you can do in and out on it. So you can like stamp a plus in, or you can stamp it out, or vice versa. Sorry about that. On stuff like circle or these beveled recesses, and you drag them in, there's going to give you a lot of options here. So you can say pattern size X, you can make it thinner this way. You can make the, oops, you can make the corner size smaller or bigger, more beveled. You can say the bevel thickness is bigger or more, or you can do pillow in or out. And now you can just use that to stamp normal detail here. So instead of doing all this in ZBrush, you can just do it really quickly in Substance, and we'll say out, and we can stamp in like so. Pretty cool, pretty fun. What do you do first for a character? Texturing or posing? I usually don't pose characters. I usually just hand that off to the animation team, and they'll make them run around. Do you make materials in Substance Designer? I do. If you go to my, well, I don't, but I can. If you go to my YouTube channel here, my playlists, go scroll all the way down, and you're going to see a Substance Designer quick start. That'll walk you through that. Could you use multiple colors for the dirt as well, like different shades of dirt? Absolutely. So if we go back to our dirt here, instead of using, for example, just a base color here, let's do a filter. We're going to add a filter, and we only want the filter to affect our color. And in here, we're going to do a gradient. Oh man, it's been a while since I've been in here. Color 1, color 2, color 3, color 4. So we've got 2 color quantities of 3. Let me think how I did this. Gradient color. So you can say for the actual color here, I'm going to go back to our procedurals, and we're just going to put in, we can put in a dirt procedural onto our base color. So now if I go to dirt here, let's go ahead and turn off this MG dirt real quick so you can see what we're doing, and we'll go ahead and delete, remove mask. So this is what we're getting. So in our dirt base color, we just have a procedural dirt look. So we have varying degrees of black and white. We've added a gradient filter to this, so we can say color 1 is going to be kind of a rusty brown, and then color 2, we can hit this and select it, and we can kind of make this kind of a yellowish gray, like so. And color 3 even, we can add even more, it looks like. So we can add even more speckles. So now we've got kind of a mottled dirt. And now when we go in here and add a black mask, and then do, let's add our generator back, I guess. And then we'll go in here and MG dirt. And then this dirt generator tells us where that mottled dirt goes. And so now your dirt's kind of broken up. You can also, I think, add another filter. And now this filter, we only want to affect the color. And we want it to go to color balance, color correction. I think there's a hue saturation levels, HSL. So we can do hue saturation and levels. So if we don't like that hue, we can just change it from like brown to green. Or if we do like the hue, but we don't want it that saturated, just drop that saturation down. And then you can also make it darker or lighter really quickly. So that way you don't have to go in there and fiddle with those colors. You can just drop a gradient or drop an HSL in there and modify that. I did the UV unwrap in Maya. Oh yeah, symmetrical. Thank you. I can't pronounce that, but thank you for bringing that up. So you can turn on symmetrical here, and then you can choose mirror X, mirror Y, mirror Z, and you can also say hide symmetry plane. So it's just, you can see that we have symmetry turned on. So now when we go in here and paint on our decals, decal white here, and again, remember when we paint the decal, it's going to automatically wear with our grunge generator. It'll go ahead and paint our decal on the other side as well. And oh shoot, it's 8:03. So I'm going to go ahead and head out. Any last minute questions I'll throw into my thing and we'll get to next time. New to ZBrush professional advice? Not really. Just learn it. Oh yeah, like Vladimir said, just learn it. Okay, where do I start watching? Go to my YouTube channel. I'll link it one more time. Here's my playlists. There you go. And Intro to ZBrush Part 1 is probably where you want to start. Cool. Alrighty. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and head out. And like I said, I'll have this all edited down, and we'll have a little bit of a nicer playlist here. Yes, there's a playlist. So Intro to ZBrush Part 1 is what you're looking for. That'll start you out just bare minimum basics of ZBrush. Cool. If you want to do a hard surface based on reference, we did that in my Pickle Rick. Go to my, actually, I'll have to find it. Google Pickle Rick on my channel, and you'll see the walkthrough. Actually, did I send that to somebody? I did. Hold on. I'll send you a list real quick. Dang it. I need to keep that around. Basically, we do from reference, we do Pickle Rick's laser cannon. So, okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next time.